Welcome to this first video in the Gaelic channel, uh, and today's topic is Beannachtaí, Bunúsacha, or basic greetings as we'd say in English. Ban R, this is maybe a CH, but before T it can be pronounced quite often as an R. Ban R T Bun U Sacha. Now, those familiar with previous Gaelic, anybody previously familiar with Gaelic will know that the CH sound here in latter syllables, not the first syllable, can be pronounced quite often as och as opposed to ah or ach, which it is in Ulster. For example, uh, in this particular example, one says Bunúsacha in Ulster as opposed to Bunúsacha. So it's Beannachtaí Bunúsacha. Beannachtaí Bunúsacha. Beannachtaí Bunúsacha. Basic greetings. Let us now have a look at some basic greetings or Beannachtaí Bunúsacha. For saying hello, these greetings can be used for saying hello to someone. So, for example, in Gillik, if one wants to say hello to one person, you say Gia Dich. Gia Dich. G Z A Dich. Gia Dich. And that's hello to one person. If you want to say hello to more than one person or multiple people, you would say Gia Dave. Gia Dave. Gia Dave. Gia Dave. If you want to ask someone how they are, in this case to one person, you would say Kaje Martatu. And I'll break that down. So that is Kaje, Kaje, Kaje Mar Atatu. Kaje Mar Atatu. Kaje Martatu. Once it's sped up. Likewise, if you want to use the plural equivalent phrase for that, would be, for how are you, would be, to more than one person, would be Kaje Mar Atashiv. Kaje Mar Atashiv. And breaking that down again to be pronounced, it is Ka J Mar Atashiv. Kaje Mar Atashiv. Kaje Mar Atashiv. Now, if you want to respond to either of these two questions, you would respond in a basic sense thus. You would say, for example, if you are good or you are well, I am good, I am well, you would say Tama Gomwai. Tama Gomwai. And I'll break this one down, of course. So Ta Ma. Now, despite the accent on the E, known as a fada in Gaelic, the long accent, this is not actually pronounced as may generally. That's seen in the Ulster dialect to provide emphasis if you're saying may all the time. So generally that's shortened just to a short E sound, like meh or ma, more like an A, short A sound. So that phrase then becomes ta ma, shorter ma, tama, not go, but ga, as in a short O sound, not a long O, but O. So tama ga moi, tama ga moi. And this word meaning good or well is pronounced moi, moi, moi. Conversely, if you want to say I am not good or I am not well, you would say nilma gomoi, nilma gomoi. And once that's broken down again into its various components, it's pronounced nil, 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 ma, ga, moi, nilma gomoi, nilma gomoi. And these are some basic greetings that can be used in Gillik. Moving on to the next page here, we can see that there are other ways to greet people, such as this first phrase here. Giadich Maharij, Giadich Maharij, which means hello, my friend, to one person. You've already seen, of course, Giadich. Ma, not mo, but ma, pronounced another short O, is the Gaelic word for my, and it causes what's called lenition, but I'll come to that in another video, which is why the word for friend here, carriage, is being pronounced harage, harage. it simply causes aspiration or a hitch or sound or throaty sort of sound to be added to the to certain consonants, uh, simply making it easier to say. And it's just the effect that certain pronouns such as ma and other words and even particular grammar rules, and I'll come back to that, have. But in this particular phrase, this particular case, this phrase pronounced Giadich Maharaj. Giadich Maharaj. Uh, you can also say, with the same meaning nowadays generally, Giadich Mahara. Giadich Mahara. And both uh, Kharaj and Khara carry the same meaning, and they're both to a singular one friend. You would say this too. So Giadich Maharaj or Giadich Mahara. If you wanted to address a group of friends, it's the same in the plural for both Kharaj and Khara. You would say Giadaiv Maharja. Giadaiv Maharja. Giadaiv Maharja. So sped up, that becomes Giadaiv Maharja. And this R here is not being pronounced as the R in English because it's one of the. We'll come to this later in the video, but what's known as a slender R. So it's not Karja or Harja. It's Giadaiv Maharja. Maharja. Similar to like the Z hitch in certain Slavic languages or even in English, such as the word measure, the j, but it's not exactly the same. It's being pronounced simply in a slender form. We don't have this in English, actually. We don't have this pronunciation really of the letter R. This certain languages have a lot of pronunciations of the letter R, such as Hindi, which has both vocalic and consonantal pronunciations for the letter R. But in Gaelic, there are generally nowadays two pronunciations of the letter R, what's called a broad R, or the R really that we're more familiar with in English, which is a R or R. And this slender R, which you can see in this word here, for friends, Kharja, Kharja, slightly different. Giadiv Maharja, Giadiv Maharja, Giadiv Maharja. Hello, my friends. Then I should have probably put this in the page before. However, if someone says Giadich or Giadiv to you, often they'll respond with one of these two phrases. Once again, uh, depending on whether they're speaking to one person or to a group of people, they will say either Gia is muera ditch. Gia is muera ditch. Gia is muera ditch. Not Mura. Again, here we can see this other slender R. You would think that's pronounced Mura if you're speaking in English, but it's actually Gia, Gia is, which is a form of the word and. Muera, 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 yeah, sound again. Ditch. Gia is muera ditch. Gia is muera. Gia is muera ditch. Or if they're speaking to more than one person, they'll respond by saying to a group of people, Gia is muera div. 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 And what it literally means actually is God, I'm married to you. Uh, uh, Depending, of course, whether it's that's why ditch becomes div, because it's the plural of that particular preposition, meaning to you, or in this particular case. Now, I just put at the bottom here, just to remember that to note well that cardia, 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 cardia is the plural of both cara and carriage, which both mean friend. Uh, I believe traditionally there was actually a distinction in meaning in older forms of Gaelic, possibly more literary Gaelic, but that has since fallen away as the language has become less spoken and written less. And both these are just now seen as the standard word used is generally cara, cara, cara. But one will also still hear carriage, carriage, which is used in Scotland, of course, and Scottish Gaelic also. On this page here, we'll now look at what I've entitled some dialectal variation for asking how you are in the three extant or still existing dialects of Gaelic on the island of Ireland. There are three main dialects, of course, being based in the historic provinces of Ulster, Connacht, and Munster. Generally, I'll be concentrating on Ulster and standard sort of Gaelic. phrases, etc. But these phrases are used a lot, and you'll see these being used by folks who speak the different dialects. So it is important, I think, to at least have a knowledge of them, because they do, in essence, in English, they're asking the same thing, but they're phrased differently originally in the Gaelic to ask someone how you are, basically. So, for example, this first one for Ulster, to ask, which we've already covered, of course, to ask someone how they are to one person, you would say, "G'day martatu, g'day martatu, g'day martatu, ka j mar ata tu, g'day mar ata tu, g'day martatu." Likewise, the plural to more than one person is, and the reason for that, of course, is because tu is the singular pronoun for you in Gaelic, while shiv is the plural. So, g'day marata shiv, ka j mar ata shiv, g'day mar ata shiv, g'day marata shiv. How are you? Now in Connacht, you'll hear, or one will generally hear, one of these two phrases. Céin chi a bhfuil tú, 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 and that's to one person in Connacht to ask how they are. The plural of that then being céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin I'm spreading the first word wrongly there. Céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin, 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 céin chi a bhfuil sibh, céin chi a bhfuil sibh. In Connacht, to ask a group of people or more how they are, more than one person essentially. In Munster, as far south as one can go in the former world of Gaeldom, in terms of the old kingdoms, etc., will hear one of these two phrases. And the reason I put there's sort of two versions used, both written and pronounced, for both the singular and the plural. One will hear conas atá tú, conas atá tú, which means how are you to one person in Munster. But one will also hear conas tá tú, leaving off this a, this being the more standard grammatical written form, and this being the second one being the more dialectal use, I believe. However, both are perfectly correct and can be written thus, as they're seen here. So, conas atá tú, conas atá tú, or conas tá tú, conas tá tú, conas tá tú. So, conas atá tú, conas tá tú. Not really that much difference, really, when you think about it, except that this here atá preserves the grammatical roots, or the etymological roots, one might say, of the phrase better than the second one, which is more dialectal. One will also hear then, of course, in the plural, conas atá shiv, conas atá shiv, or conas tá shiv, conas atá shiv, conas tá shiv, conas atá shiv, conas tá shiv. How are you to more than one person in Munster? And interestingly, the letter A, when written with an accent, an acute accent over it, called a fada in Gillik, which is simply from the Gaelic. Fada comes from the Gaelic for long, the Gaelic adjective for long. In this particular case, the letter A is pronounced differently in the northern and southern dialects of Gaelic traditionally. In Munster and Connacht, generally one will hear the A pronounced as an aw, closer to what we have in our English word law, aw, as opposed to in Ulster, as an ata, as opposed to atá, atá, atá. So you can see that is pronounced differently between Ulster and Connacht and Munster, that letter A sound. Atá, 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 atá. We can now move on to some ways in Gaelic to say goodbye. The standard way to say goodbye in Gaelic is slán, slán, and that simply just means goodbye in English. Slán, uh, slán, 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 slán. This is the simplest way to take your leave, and it's simply the Gaelic word for health. It's actually etymologically related to the Latin, the ancient Latin phrase salve, salve, meaning, so coming from the Latin word salvus, salvus meaning health also, and lends some credence to the theory that within the Indo-European languages there is a language family known as the Italo-Celtic uh, branch, which basically suggests that Latin and the Celtic languages sprung from some common source within the Indo-European languages from the past. And I suppose you could argue this is either just an isolated case or perhaps it lends credence to that. But it is the word for goodbye generally is slan, slan. Pardon me, slan, slan, meaning health. Another way you can say goodbye is slan gafoil, slan, ga, remember short O, not long, not go, but ga, slan, ga, foil, slan ga foil, slan ga foil, slan, ga, foil, slan ga foil, slan ga foil, slan ga foil. Goodbye for now. It's something similar to like the phrases in Portuguese and Spanish, such as the Portuguese phrase até já, até já, or the Spanish phrase hasta luego, hasta luego, hasta luego, and carries a similar sort of meaning to those phrases. Goodbye for now. These four here may look quite complicated below, but they're not as complicated as they look. So these are simply, for example, this phrase here, slan lat, slan lat, slan lat, means goodbye, but it's used by a person who is leaving a house, for example, by the person who's staying at home, for example. So this is used when addressing a single individual or one person. Um, so the person staying at the house will stay at the front door, staying, waving at the person leaving, will say slan lat, slan lat, slan lat. But the person leaving will say slan eget or uget, as some people like to say, slan eget, slan eget, slan eget, slan eget, slan eget. This is said to the person who's remaining at the house, but the person who is leaving, the person waving at them from the road, say, or the footpath. And this is used also when addressing a single individual or one person. The meaning literally is for slan lat something like health with you, because you're saying that to the person that's leaving, so you want the health to go with them in a sense. And slan iget means health at you, so the health remain with you at the house. So it's simply just in a basic sense, a way of people wishing each other to remain in good health until they, God willing, next see each other. Of course, these bottom two phrases are simply the plural equivalents of these two phrases. So, slan live, slan live, slan live, slan live, slan live, slan live, slan live is the equivalent of slan lat in the plural, and this means goodbye. This is said to the people who are leaving by the person or persons who are staying at home. For example, this is used when addressing multiple people or individuals. Uh, so if you're addressing a group of family members leaving, you would say slan live, as opposed to slan lat. Likewise, if they're addressing more than one person staying at the house, they would say then, from the footpath, for example, they would say slan egiv, slan egiv, slan egg iv, slan egiv, slan egiv. So slan egiv is used to mean goodbye also. Slan egiv is said to the person or persons who are remaining at the home by the people who are leaving. It's once again used when addressing multiple people or individuals. And these are the general ways to say goodbye in Gaelic, from slan, the general way to say goodbye, or slan gafoil for goodbye for now, to these other four phrases at the bottom, which are used, the phrases being slan lat, slan eget, slan live, slan egiv. And these are used, of course, for saying goodbye to people or friends or family members leaving the house or anywhere generally. It doesn't have to be a family member, it could be in any circumstance really, but simply just to wish someone to remain in good health. And there's sort of set phrases as to how you respond, really. They're used in a sense that one knows how to respond to the phrase based on what phrase is used, as I've explained earlier there. We now move on to an important, or indeed an absolutely key rule of Gaelic spelling. So in Gaelic, as I've written here, there's a fundamental spelling rule, and it's encapsulated in this phrase here, Caol le Caol agus leathan le leathan, which means slender with slender and broad with broad. In other dialects, in fact the vast majority of dialects outside of Ulster, rather than Caol, you will hear the word for slender pronounced as Caol, Caol, I. Historically, however, the AO here was pronounced as I, not U as in the English word foot, but U as in the German word Uba. Uba is pronounced further down the mouth, like the French word for you, singular French pronoun for you, not tu, but tu, tu. It's similar sort of sound, so it's cool, not cool, but cool. Cool le cool agus leathan le leathan. Cool le cool agus, or agus, some people say agus or agus, but agus is the generally agreed upon pronunciation for the word and in Gaelic. Cool le cool agus leathan le leathan. Cool le cool agus leathan le leathan, meaning slender with slender and broad with broad. Now what does this actually mean? So this basically refers to the 5 Gaelic vowels and how they are used alongside consonants to spell any Gaelic word. Gaelic vowels, I've put in brackets here also, are often accented to show they are long as opposed to short vowels. And you can see here I've shown you what the long equivalents would look like. And of course, the short equivalents are simply the same vowels without the accent. And the acute accent mark in Gaelic is called a fada, fada, F-A-D-A, fada, from the Gaelic adjective meaning long. So the vowels are, in Gaelic, the 5 vowels, whether long or short, are broken up into broad vowels and slender vowels. There are 3 broad vowels, the letters A, O, and U. The letters A, O, and U are simply broad vowels. The slender vowels are E and I. So what this in effect means is that if a consonant is adjacent to or beside a broad vowel, such as A, O, or U, then the consonant will be pronounced in its broad form. And likewise, if a consonant is adjacent to or beside a slender vowel, E or I, then the consonant will be pronounced in a slender form. And on the next page, I shall demonstrate what this actually means in practice. So on this page, we have some examples of words showing the broad and slender consonantal pronunciations. However, in reality, I've actually used one example because I think it's better of one phrase rather to demonstrate just with a phrase I've already used in the video. So let's use the phrases we learned earlier to demonstrate the aforementioned rule. Caol le caol agus leathan le leathan, slender with slender and broad with broad, which is simply referring that you must keep slender vowels and consonants together, and broad vowels and broad consonants together. They have to stay together, or rather, the slender consonants are shown together with the slender vowels, and the broad consonants are shown together with the broad vowels, which affects their pronunciation. However, of course, there are diphthongs in Gaelic, and they're spelled slightly differently than the 5 standard long or short vowels, but I'll come back to that at another time. So let's use the phrase Giadich, which is hello to one person. So the first D in Gia is slender, and the second D in dich is broad. Now, to somebody whose native language is English, such as myself, you'll often hear that the D in Gia sounds like something like our English J sound, J like in jam, but it's not exactly that sound. It's somewhere between a D and perhaps maybe an English J sound. I'm not a linguistic expert, so I can't comment entirely on that, but I know the word is pronounced gia, gia, gia. In some dialects, it's pronounced dia, dia. But in Ulster, it's pronounced as gia, gia. And this D is slender because it has a slender I vowel beside it. And the IA there, ia, is a diphthong. Uh, and both, in this particular instance, both vowel components are pronounced because it's a diphthong. Gia, gia. So as I've said, the first D in gia is slender, and we get this something like an English J sound, but it's not exactly a J sound. And the second D in ditch, ditch is broad. So you hear ditch, the. It's closer to what we think of as a D sound in English. The. Finally, for this phrase, the T at the end of ditch is slender. It might sound to you something like an English ch sound, as in church. Ditch, ditch, or similar to the English word ditch itself, a ditch, but it's not, once again, exactly the same sound. It might sound like that initially. The sound here that we hear at the end of ditch, ditch, is actually closer to a T than it is to the English ch, as in cheese or church. It's ditch, it's more about where, and I'll probably cover this in another video, the consonant is pronounced in the mouth together with the vowel, because the broad and the slender vowels affect where you pronounce the consonants in your mouth. So, for example, I believe the linguistic terms are velarization and palatalization, something like Y and W sounds, maybe. As I say, I'll cover that in another video, hopefully. But the point is that it will result, as a result of these broad vowels, broad consonants, you will hear different pronunciations being used for the same letter. So, for example, in English, generally, we expect the letter D to be pronounced as D, except for in certain circumstances where we borrowed words from other languages, like the word duke, which comes from the Latin dux. It is pronounced a J because it's come to us through French, the French je becoming a J in English, and certain other words, of course, have passed through to English from other languages like that. But there are certain words in English which we assume when we see them written, we hear the pronunciation of the consonants, and it sort of becomes natural to us. In Gaelic, you'll often see a D, but it depends what vowel is beside that D, whether you pronounce it as J or D. It depends whether it's pronounced as Gia, J, J, or ditch, the. It's slightly different. A similar thing occurs in some Slavic languages, such as Russian, which has hard and soft consonants. So some Slavic speakers might be familiar with this, but generally in Germanic languages, and even in the Romance languages, this isn't really the case. And even people such as myself, native English speakers, struggle to pronounce Gaelic words as a result initially, because we're not used to this system of pronunciation. It's also why Gaelic words appear to be spelled very strangely, because it looks like there are random combinations of vowels, and you think to yourself, well, what do I pronounce? Do I pronounce ditch as do itch? No, it's really just the I that's pronounced in this case, ditch, ditch, in the word ditch. The U is simply there to tell you that the D is broad as opposed to slender, as pronounced as a broad consonantal D, as opposed to a slender D, like in the word gia, gia. And generally, when you hear the word pronounced by somebody, you'll know which vowel is being pronounced, really, unless it's a diphthong, in which case often both components or both vowels are pronounced to an extent. And we see here, so why is this the case I've just written here? It is because the first D in gia, gia, is adjacent to the slender vowel I. The second D in ditch, ditch, is adjacent to the broad vowel U. And the T at the end of ditch, ditch, is adjacent to the slender vowel I. So this rule, and Gaelic pronunciation in general, shall be explained further in another video. It is, however, useful to be aware of this rule from the very beginning, from the very beginning of one studies as it permeates the spelling of every Gaelic word and affects how every Gaelic word is spelt, written down, and pronounced. And it, of course, simply remains for me to thank you for watching this video and to wish you good health. Slán go fóill. Slán go fóill.